years. That's a long period, right? 10 years. Huh? Right. So if I put, obviously, let's leave the Lijjat guy aside, right? But if I put the bunch of companies, oh, by the way, Britannia is an Indian FMCG, right? Okay. If I put all the Indian FMCGs on, on one weighing scale, right, and I put all these MNCs on another weighing scale, right, and most of the companies that we have mentioned, I think except for a Patanjali, I think largely a Patanjali, everything else, right, and maybe a Mondelez because it's got delisted now, right. All these companies are listed in the stock markets, yeah, in the Indian stock markets, right. So in the last 10 years, 10 years is a long period. So, economic cycles happen, everything happens, right. Modi comes, Modi goes, everything will happen, right. So, which set out of these two, right, if you had invested 100 rupees would have given you better returns? Hey, raise your hands. I see a lot of smiles but no answers. Huh? Okay, how many people say Indian FMCG? Hands up. Right. They're all Baba Ramdev followers. Huh? Patriotics, okay. And how many people say the MNCs? A little less. I think it's a 60-40 ratio. Huh? Right. It's. I'm not an authority on this topic, but my guess is that it's Indian FMCGs. Right, but that was not the case if I go back another 2 decades. If I go back another 2 decades, that was not the case. And why do you think that's happened? Can someone surmise? Any guess why it's happened? So do you all agree? Okay, so I mean obviously there were some people who said MNCs, right? Do you all agree? When I said that the Indian FMCGs have delivered much better results or performances over the last 10 years cumulatively, right? Do you all agree?
So perhaps the consumers' purchasing power has increased.
So they started buying Indian FMCG products. So because the purchasing power has gone up, people are buying Patanjali toothpaste rather than Colgate. Is that the logic? No? Okay. Change in regulations. What kind of change in regulations? Loudly? Oh, you can't speak loudly, there's no career in sales and marketing.
FDI changes.
FDI changes. So give me an example of which MNC got suffered because of that.
Maybe the new government will have less of FDI investment, so the market will.
How many people agree? There's no votes for you. Okay?
The Indian FMCGs have transitioned to global standards. So this was a differentiating factor earlier between the global MNCs and the Indian FMCGs. But when they transitioned to global standards and improved their productions and all quality, so that is where the factor was reduced, the differentiation factor between both.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
Understand the people better as compared to the MNCs, so they are a better penetration.
Okay, all right. Liberalization of the economy would have benefited Indian better than MNC? But in a way, she's got an angle, so I'll come to it. Why? Not the way she's verbalized it, but yeah.
Adding to his point, maybe consumer awareness with that, like how the Indian FMCG brands are coming forward, advertising their products and making people aware of all the products that are available. So maybe that.
So, okay, you are trending towards this. You had one more point.
Cheaper products.
Cheaper products. So you become successful over 10 years by making cheaper products?
It caters to the rural population and the penetration.
Okay, so inexpensive products. Okay, all right.
So,
yeah.
The type of products being offered.
Who's that?
Yep.
Okay.
The type of products being offered, I mean, it caters to the taste of Indian.
That's a repeat. Okay.
Another reason could be penetration of technology all over the country. It is because of technology that now brands are able to connect more to the people. So it has created awareness.
But that technology is available to both sides. Or you think those guys are a little behind the curve? Not true. Half of you are going to join MNCs, half of you are join Indian FMCGs.
Another aspect can be, like potentially she mentioned that connecting with the buyers as in knowing their culture. Similarly, knowing the culture of the sellers or the distribution network, so that may be helping in the longer run.
Okay. So, I'll tell you the fundamental thing that has happened, right, and some of it is what you all have talked about are various ways and means, right, is that somewhere, so I think she touched upon it, but it was in a little tangential manner, is that when India went through liberalization, right, and it opened up doors, what that did was that suddenly, while regulations got liberalized, right, access to capital and investment became easier, access to technology became easier, foreign exchange was not that much of a constraint which was there, let's say 3 decades back or 2.5 decades back, right. So all of that suddenly enabled, but the biggest thing that managed to happen while this environment was changing was the minds opened, right. People started thinking, right, and there was, it was like a success led to success, right. You saw a success in an organization and inspired 5 other organizations to get inspired, right, that if they can do it, even we can do it. And what that did sequentially, and therefore resulting in this 10-year thing that I'm talking about, because it's a well-documented article somewhere, so it is factually true, right? These guys have performed better, right? Is that this opening of mind, opening of possibilities, that I can, for example, basically I can fight that Goliath, right? I can produce products better than the best. I can get the best consumer insight, right? I can get access to the best techniques, processes, technology, right, which is available in the world. I can get access to, right, most importantly, the best talent that is available in the world. And this entire I can thing, which opens up at, the entire possibilities of various things that are possible, which were constrained in various forms and manner, right, eventually showed up in this. And my guess is that the next 10 years will be again belonging to these guys. Primarily because all this I can and opening of possibilities is basically going to result in a much better and a closer understanding of the consumer in India, specifically in the FMCG context, right. In that context, it's going to be all the more critical, right, and this is going to only go on continuing, right, and that's my guess, right. We'll wait and see 10 years down the line how it works out. So there will be, sorry.
Specifically, why did this change impact the Indian FMCGs? It was an I can attitude, but that attitude was everywhere, right? So what was specifically the Indian FMCGs had that this particular fire ignited?
So I'll give you an example, right? You all have heard of a company called Marico? You all have heard, right? So Marico was a pretty fuddy-duddy kind of a company 15 years back. Parachute oil banata tha, and there was some segment of certain age group of consumers who used to use it, right? Obviously the younger consumers were nowhere attached to it. And eventually, right, though I will not be able to spend time how that company tried to transform itself, right, and majority of the work obviously happened in the decade of the 2000s, right. Now others have moved faster ahead, right, but the way the transformation happened was that they, so if I remember right, in the early 2000s or late 90s, so obviously Marico used to make a lot of money in this parachute oil business. Right, it used to dominate it, right. It was a small company, but it used to dominate it and make a lot of money in it. So others obviously were tempted to get into it. So wherever there's a profit pool, people want to get into it, yeah, right. So HUL wanted to get into it. So HUL did an acquisition, and they bought a company from Tata's, right, and I think the brand was Nihar or something like that. Does anyone recollect it? Has read it somewhere? Has anyone? It's still with Marico, right? So Marico bought Nihar, sorry, pardon? Yeah, right now. But however, HUL wanted to get into it, right? And they bought it out. They have finally sold it to Marico now, right? But this is almost 12, 13 years back when they bought it from Tata's to get into that business, right? And when they got into it, right, they eventually realized, right, that the company had to, the Marico then therefore then transformed. The point was that because the opening of minds and possibilities happened, right, and obviously there were some 15 things went behind it, right from the processes of the company, the kind of talent that the company had, right, it was built with, the commodity traders kind of people, etc. There were no consumer specialists in that company, right. So, the entire proliferation of the kind of brands, right, within the parachute umbrella, what kind of sub-brands that came out, etc., right, the kind of products that they went into, eventually forced them to exit their entire business. So that's the difference that could happen. Because the issue is basically that the unique thing that these guys carry is that they are the closest to Indian consumers, right. These guys don't have mandates globally. The problem that is there is that these guys have, the MNCs have a lot of other advantages. So they've got a massive R&D scale that's available globally, right. They've got huge amount of capital that is available. So if you want to take a bet on a certain sector or a product category or whatever, they've got the outlay to do it. Once you remove those barriers for the other set, right, is when basically then the USP came out in terms of who's understanding the Indian consumers better. So suddenly, the rest of the stuff became a level playing field. And once that happened is where these guys have started obviously moving far ahead. There are several industries actually where MNCs have never made headway, where even with the kind of restrictions that were there earlier, there were companies that had managed to break through on it. So one of the best industries that I can think of is, is Amul, right? That guy has simply not let anyone come in, right? And he's trying to ensure, right, that he's ahead of the curve. So he's no longer wanting to be only a liquid milk player. Right? He's very desperately and aggressively trying to upgrade the consumer, right, before the consumer starts asking for it and Amul doesn't have it to offer. And which is why someone else, an MNC, will come in and say that, boss, I've got a platform that's available, products that are available nationally, globally, and I'll offer this cheese to you, I'll offer this flavored milk to you, etc. So that guy is wanting to ensure that I am ahead of the curve. There's another company that I can think of, right, is anyone else? Any other company? Which has ensured that, forget the last 10 years, over the last 50 years, has not allowed an MNC to come in into a large category. Pidilite, yeah. It's not that large, but yeah, Pidilite. Pardon? Asian Paints. In the paint industry, it's built up such massive entry barriers that these ICIs of the world basically tried a lot, right? And now Akzo Nobel, but they're nowhere there. They're less than 1% market share. They've got enough billions of dollars to invest out here, right? And spurts and starts, they've tried to do it, but they simply make no headway because our man has tried to ensure that there's so many entry barriers that they built up and stay ahead of the curve. This is the point that I was trying to make, right? That unless you are anticipating the changes that the world goes through, you're going to be left behind.
Sir, let's say we take example of Marico and HUL. So you are saying the Indian FMCG is able to get the consumer insights better, right?
Provided the rest of the level playing field is there, and which is what has happened.
But like, how are they able to do that? Because in Indian MNC also the same Indians are working, and they'll also get the same opportunity to get the consumer insights, right?
That's a nice question. Any answers, anyone? So many people give me those answers, right? That this is the consumer insight that drives and etc., right? Why do you think that only this side has it or has it better? Obviously not only, right? Everyone has it. Everyone has got successes. Why do you think?
I read one interview in which initially when McD came into India, they were not very strong on the veg segment of their options that they had. They were like, our non-veg is going to sell a lot more for us to generate revenues. But ultimately, they had to bring in the veg segment because that was what the percentage of consumers, they had to look into that. Probably that is one of the cases where we can.
See, the answer to your question, right, lies in flexibility. So whichever company is flexible and nimble enough, right, has managed to ensure that they overcome that barrier. But it's not very easy for these companies to be that flexible. Because, see, it works in their favor in a manner, because if they are going to straddle, let's say, for example, some 50 countries across the world, right? If everyone is going to start running around in their own direction, saying that no, I don't want a Colgate, I want a Kolkata or something like that, then you're going to be in deep shit down the line, right? You will have 50 different companies literally running, so you will never have economies of scale, right? However, how do you best marry these two is where the problem lies. So if you bend too much towards the standardization, right, you will miss out on these insights. So what is Patanjali doing, for example, right? It's all said and done. I mean, people might make mockery of it, right? And people might want to ask questions about where his money is coming from. But the effect is that all said and done, consumers are lapping it up, right? What is he doing? See, he is finally at some point in time has managed to get an insight, right, which obviously people have missed out on. That's why consumers are lapping it up. A lot of our households have it. Your parents are using it, right? So the issue lies in terms of flexibility, right? There are companies, by the way. So let me ask you the reverse question, right? So which category, right, can you think of where an MNC is dominated and Indians have not made a headway? Hey, no murmuring. Hands up. Pardon? Dettol. Okay. All right. That's a very narrow niche category. Pardon? Beverages. Okay. Actually, it's a slightly dicey case in beverages, right? That the Coke tried a lot to kill Thumbs Up, right? So actually, that's a beautiful case, in fact, in a way, right? To just tell you that the constraints that fellow had when he had to sell, that Chauhan guy who had to sell Thumbs Up, if he was here 2 decades down the line, right, that guy would not have sold. He would have had access to capital to fight out these guys and would have still stayed dominant, which is what these guys have now. Whether it is a Godrej consumer who's fighting it out, right, in terms of, so those guys are now wanting to ensure, right, so he dominates the hair dye segment and all that stuff, right, that's where that's one, and the other one is that, the mosquito repellent stuff, right, is where bulk of his money is made. That guy is ensuring that not only will he basically, not only is wanting to ensure that he is ahead of the curve. Those L'Oreals of the world have managed to hit the, Garniers and L'Oreals have managed to hit the top end, right? This guy is still ensuring, he's trying hard to ensure that he stays ahead of the curve. And as and when that top end becomes large, he needs to be there. But simultaneously, he is also trying to ensure that he goes across the world and builds up expertise which can then be cross-fertilized all across and economies of scale. But this fellow who had to sell forcibly Thumbs Up, right, he at that time didn't have these options available to him. He didn't have the capital. He could see very clearly in front of him. This fellow Coke is coming here to make losses for the next 10 years, but he'll make sure that I get rubbed into the ground. Before that happens, let me sell out, make my money and get out. Right? So it's actually a beautiful example. I mean, Coke tried to kill Thumbs Up for the first 10 years. They didn't finally realize that it's worth selling it. So now it's still their largest cola brand. Yeah.
Sir, another example could be, the beauty cream sector.
Actually,
where
the speaker system is such that I can never realize who's speaking.
Sir, so like women prefer global brands rather than Vico Turmeric, which is the Indian brand, in case of beauty creams. So.
In case of beauty creams. Right, that's possible, yeah. No, by the way, Imami is there. Imami has made huge inroads. Possible. Right. Pardon? But I am talking from the FMCG, right. Consumer electronics has got many other barriers in terms of, infrastructure. It gets into a little more ecosystem complexity. Right. Chocolates. I was actually looking forward to that, and I thought that all of you are young. Yeah, that's another area. I agree, absolutely, and that's a sitting duck for someone, and someone's going to come and do something in it, right? So you can look forward to and await that in the next 10 years, right? Okay, let's move forward. Otherwise, we'll get stuck. We can always, catch questions down the line, right? What is my role in Britannia? I have already talked about it. Let me talk about Britannia a little to you, right? Just for you to understand a little. So Britannia is a 90-year-old company, right? And actually, there are very few companies that last 90 years. Another couple of years, 90 plus years. In fact, another couple of years will be 100 plus, right? So that suddenly makes all of us feel a lot of fuddy-duddy, right? None of us have worked for 100 years, right? But a company that lasts 100 years itself is a rarity. Very few companies last. So, as when the intro was being given, I had worked in Motorola for a couple of years. Right? So, the time when I was working there, right, Motorola was known for its mobile phones, etc. Right? Motorola is actually the innovator in terms of the one who came up with the first mobile phone. Right? So, it's the inventor. Right? And it was, how do you say, for a good part of the 90s was the market leader. I mean, the market was not that large, but it was the market leader. And the market was not that large in India, but in some pockets of especially the Western world, etc., was reasonably large, etc. Right? So it was the market leader. Right? However, Nokia came and wiped the carpet under it, and eventually Motorola, as I said, got twice sold over. It was defunct. Right? And I think at some point in time, Nokia must have commanded a market share globally of about 40-45%. Globally. I don't think any brand in the world carries that kind of market share, right? Even now. Right? Even the biggest brands that you can think of, so, chocolates, Cadbury is number 3 in the world actually. Right? So, all said and done, having a 40-45% market share globally, right, was the kind of dominance. Now, Nokia is twice sold over. Right? So, a company to last 100 years is a very unique thing. Right? And somehow, so that somewhere tells you the ethos that the company has got some amount of, some kind of a spirit or a soul inside which makes sure that it finally changes with the times, right? But broadly, more recently speaking, so Britannia is the market leader in India, right? So Britannia, I think, has overtaken Parle about 24 months back, right? It's a very competitive industry, right? There are a whole bunch of players. There are very few entry barriers, right? My grandmother knew how to make biscuits. Someone gets a little ambitious, puts a wrapper around it, starts, basically puts up a slightly larger oven behind it and starts selling it around. Someone gets a little more ambitious, right? Puts a wrapper, right? Tries to put some branding on it and starts selling it within a 100-kilometer radius. So that's as easy as anyone can come into the play. It was also, the industry was hobbled with certain amount of, government restrictions and things on that front till about the early 2000s. And that's what I meant by mindset change. So all those things also involved basically the liberalization, the level playing field coming out, right? People could set up large factories, develop entry barriers in some form, right? And therefore, I think the last few years it's prospered pretty well. Yeah. As I said, it's a very strongly sales and marketing driven organization, right? And 6 million outlets is one. We've got a whole bunch of brands. I think in all the categories that we play in biscuits, we play in cakes, we play in rusk, we play in dairy, and we play in international business, right? In most of these categories, we are number 1 players, right? In fact, in both biscuits, cakes and rusk, we are number 1, right? Dairy, we are not. Dairy, we are a very small player actually, even in the value-added category. Yeah. And international is, it's not completely comparable, but yes, in some markets that we play, we are a number 1 or a number 2 player. It's a reasonably, young organization, right, as you can see from me. Yeah. Okay, and yeah, that's broadly the stuff about Britannia. Right. Okay, let's see further what else, then we'll get back to your questions. What does Britannia allow me to be? I don't think this point was written by me. Okay. So there are 2 or 3 things, right? But in this way, I'll try and tackle, and we'll see whether it tackles some of the questions. So Britannia as a company believes in empowerment, right, and empowerment very early in life. And what that does is that basically, what we have also realized is that the youth of today, and more importantly the younger talent, which is in the age bracket of less than 30, right, is very restless, right. They are not necessarily, and they are very bold and risk taking also, right. So we've got, actually a young managers group. That group presents to the board once in 6 months, right, and gives their perspective on how Britannia is moving as a company, and they are not only licensed, but they are forced to be as bold as they can want to be, right? So challenge some of the status quo, challenge what we as fuddy-duddies, keep on discussing in various forums and, management committees and things on that front, right? Challenge the direction that the company is taking, right? Challenge the legacy of the company also. So, this thing that I proudly talked about, 100 years unique, so the last session they were actually saying that what 100 years, who values 100 years, right? No one wants to see more than 2-3 years now. Yeah, right. No one wants to, how do you say, consume the products of Britannia in the form that they are being sold right now. Right? People want to see it in different forms. Right? The world across, right? And many of these managers are empowered to try and scan across the world, right? Look at marketplaces, see what happens in those categories, etc. Right? And therefore then tell us where the future going to be. Right? What are the categories that we need to be in, and therefore be ahead of the curve, right? To ensure that we don't get left behind the way Bajaj got by Honda, right? So I don't want to be the guy with the scooter, yeah, selling Chetak till the time that damn thing broke down, right? When the carpet was pulled out from below me. So effectively, it's we empower people, right? And that is structurally done in the way we go about trying to basically right from recruitment to basically the kind of stints that we give to people, and in various means and forms, right, right up till the top management. We also fundamentally believe in a very, it's not very easy for you all to appreciate right now in your career, but maybe another 4, 5, 7 years down the line, once you have got it into work, you will appreciate we've got a policy that's called Britannia for Britannians. At any point in time, at any level in the entire organization, if there's a role, right, we give a disproportionate preference to a person within Britannia. Right, that's a very large philosophy that we follow, right, and it doesn't mean that we never recruit from outside. We do times recruit laterally, right, but that's only as a last resort, right, when you want a specific skill set or a certain kind of a experience which is not available within, right. However, in most cases of middle and top management, right, what matters is people management, rest of it can be grabbed up. So that's what broadly, you can on a softer basis look forward to Britannia. We'll come back to specific questions that you might have in mind. Yeah. Let's get back to the questions then. Anything you all want to, I suddenly saw a lot of silence. Okay, let's get back to those questions. Let's see. What is this? No. So go back to those questions. We'll come back to this in case we have time. So that was more philosophical gyan that I had for people like you all who are going to undergo a pretty strong transition in life, right, in terms of from campus to corporate life. And that's what some of those points were touching on. So we'll see if we get time for that. What are the challenges faced in sales and marketing? So who asked that question? Yeah, can you just elaborate? What is the question that exactly you wanted? Yeah.
So let's say I'm a field salesperson. I go to different places. I'll be facing challenges like people behave differently in different places. Each person would have a different behavior compared to the person standing next to him. So how do you deal with such kind of people?
Are all these 300 people of yours similar? Friends of yours? So how do you deal with them? Do you deal with them? No. See, some things in life will never be, you only have to go through an experiential learning, right? And your experiential learning has already started. So in a way, your campus out here, I presume, right, has got innumerable opportunities for you to interact with people, right? Whether it be in terms of your projects, whether it be in terms of, the extracurricular activities that you all do, whole bunch of things, whether it's, arts, sports, various forms and manners, contests, you all must be doing, I guess, festivals and conferences are getting arranged, things on that front. When you participate in these, yeah, that's where you get the answer. So trust me, unless you are a person who wants to do a PhD and be a scholar, right, you better force yourself in all these, because your learning has already started. Your answer to this question has already started, if that's the question that you asked for. There are a lot of other challenges that you will face when you join a FMCG company in sales and marketing. Yeah, as I said, 9 out of 10 cases, you will be spending an initial phase of your life in sales, right? And that involves a lot of other challenges. That involves challenges in terms of staying away from your family. So I remember when I was a management trainee, right, and I went to my guide. This was, I think, must be about 5-6 months into my training stint, the first year that you have. Yeah. Right. And I went and asked him that, my hometown is, my parents stay in Pune. So can I, where can I expect my posting after the first year? So I had reconciled to the fact that sales to karna padega. Right. So posting kahan milegi? So the guy asked me, where are you from? So I said, my parents stay in Pune. He says, oh really? Okay. So then that boss of mine or whatever had a nice big map of India in his cabin. Right? Oh, you are already smiling. You know the story? Okay. All right. So he had a nice big map. Yeah. Right. So he says, where's Pune? So obviously Pune was somewhere there. Right. Then he took a string. Right. And then he attached a chalk to that string on one end. Right. He put the other one on Pune, and then he drew a circle like this. He says, anywhere outside the circle is where you will be posted.